Okay, so today we'll be removing the rollers, the rolling drums here and here from the Glen Alps press. So the first thing we had to do was remove the press bed plate, which is about 3/4 of an inch thick. Pretty heavy, but it rolled straight onto a heavy-duty cart that we had, blocked up to the same height. And we removed the 1/2-inch retaining bolts for the end retainers so that the press bed wouldn't roll off the end of the press. So there are 6 bolts, 3 on each, and we've removed those and we're ready to begin on the rest. Here we'll have to take off the chain guard to access everything else. Another thing that we'll have to, this was just an add-on later. We've got some maybe 3/8 sheet metal screws holding this plate on so that people don't get their fingers caught in there. We'll also have to take off the snap ring here, which retains this on. There are also some 3/4 inch bolts down here which we'll have to remove the assembly here. We may remove the motor as well. These are 9/16 bolts at present on this model. And we've also went around and marked some of the bolts for some of these pieces that'll have to come off. Now, to get the big drum out, we'll have to remove not only the top 2 rollers on either side here, but these as well, and these angle iron plates here. And here we've removed the snap ring from around this piece right here, so that should get us on our way. Now I'm going to loosen these 3/4 inch bolts right here that hold the things on. Lefty loosey, good. Okay, there's 1 loosened, and 2 loosened, and 3 loosened, and 4 loosened. So these should come off relatively more easily, because at this point this won't be the whole assembly. The whole assembly, as you can maybe see, is trapped behind here. So part of that plate on here that's holding this entire assembly on is going to have to come off with, I don't know if you can see it very well, there's a bolt right there. 1, 2, I think there's 3 retaining bolts on this ring to hold the entire steel roller in. So we'll have to get this apart. These steel plates will have to come off, and the retaining ring may have to come off as well. Okay, we'll see. So these are not separate bolts on the inside and the outside. This is 1 bolt, as you can see. So you actually have to hold this end with 1 wrench of the same size, 3/4 inch, and another on the other side to take the nut off. Then we'll have to slide these assemblies off at some point. Just trying to figure this out. Okay, so I've got all 4 nuts off of there. Let's see what happens now. Oh, okay. I should be able to slip this off this here so that I can remove the chains and the drive shaft here. So here it's coming apart somewhat. There we go. So I've got this sliding off the bolts. I'll just put that down there with the other ones. Oh, I've got them all neatly lined up right here. And now I'm going to slip the chain off the drive shaft right here. This is pretty greasy, so and I can lift this off the other one. So now I have the drive shaft loose on the motor, which should just pop right off. There we go. And I can get the chain off of here. Now if I ever had to clean this, which may happen in the future, now I've got that off. So now we have the large chain, which can come off. Just pulling it off like so, laying it to the side, maybe on top of here so I don't get the floor all greasy as well. So there's that. And I wonder if I can pull this straight. I can turn this plate, but at present I can't get this off. So I need to slip this past the end here because the snap ring is gone. So I'll try to hold it so that you can see what's going on. Just tilt it right here. Sorry for the overexposure. I'll see if, there we go. See, I'll just block the light. And we'll see what happens. It's a little worn on the ends here. Oh, there we go. Wiggle it a little bit. There we go. Now I've got that coming off of here. Put that down to the side. Should be able to take the second block off. That's good. Now I've got these retaining bolts right here. And those look to be about 3/8. So, actually, nope, 9/16. So, we should be able to get the shaft off. Once I undo these, they're not that tight. This is the Allen key shaft, or Allen key holder for the shaft. It just holds the entire axle in here. So, just getting these quickly off. There's one. A little greasy here. 2 and 3. 2, 3. 9/16 bolts. We should be able to slip this off at some point. Or is there another? I believe there's another snap ring. It looks like there might be another snap ring here. Oh no, that's just grease. Always use your wrench to clean the grease off. That's always handy when you want your nuts and bolts to slide. Okay, so I'll just shut that off for the moment. On closer inspection, when the secondary drive shaft was removed and the chains, we can look at the bearing really closely. And there's a lot of brass shavings right here. You can see it's just years of wear that have built up. I don't know if you can see it, but there's actually a really sharp edge right here, just from it slipping and sliding. And all of this is grease embedded with brass shavings from the bearing. It's self-lubricating as it's brass, but you know, it's one of those things that after years and years of use, I don't know if you can see better with my finger there, there's that really sharp edge. It might have to be turned and replaced at some point if the drive shaft was slipping or anything like that out of there. So just FYI. Before I disconnect these, what I'm going to do is, because most of these wires are black or white and I don't know which ones go to which, I'm going to label this black one to the green one because that's the ground. So I'll know next time. So now I can undo the wire nut If you've ever undone a wire nut, it's pretty simple. There it is. Now I know that black one goes with this green one next time I put it back together or whatever. Okay, and I'm going to do that for each one. So now you can see I've just pulled these wires apart after pulling the nuts off and labeling all of them and their connections to the 4 colors on here, because we have positive, negative, and ground, as well as a second positive, because we have actually controlled 2 things over here. We have our normal 3-prong here, but we also have our switch and the rheostat, which probably requires a 4th wire. So now that those are off and these are labeled, I can reassemble this easily enough by sticking it back in here. But at the moment, my intention is to remove the motor just by removing these 4 9/16 bolts. And that should be a simple matter now that we have the electrical removed. So for the removal of the motor, I have removed the 9/16 bolts. This particular model only had 3 holding the motor on for some reason, but it should be an easy matter to lift off the motor now since it's loose off its bearings. So that should reduce the weight by about 50-60 pounds. Okay, so jumping to the motor, I've removed because on this electric model, it comes from the motor here with a conduit all the way to the plug right here, which provides power to the motor, and the on-off switches and speed switch, or that's some kind of rheostat right here. So jumping back to here, we've got a couple of Phillips heads. All the power is unplugged. It's not into the wall, so I'm working safely. To remove the motor from its mounts is a simple matter. I'm just going to pull out these wires right here, which is a mess, but to remove the motor, I'm going to have to disconnect these wires. So I think to get this off, I'm going to have to go get a harmonic balancer, which is a specialty tool. It has 3 prongs like a crow's foot, and should fit in 1, 2, 3 places. And what it does it has a central screw. Once you've put the bolts into here, it has a central screw that you push down, and it applies pressure to the shaft, pulling this off. I think that would be the safest way to get it off. So I'll have to run down to the other end and get it. It'll take you a second and me probably the whole of lunch. So I borrowed this from the automotive technician that we have. We have an harmonic balancing gear puller, I believe it's what it's called. And it'll be abundantly clear how this works in a minute. Here we are. We're trying to pull this off of the axle right here. What we need is a harmonic balancer, and here's what we have. We got that from the automotive shop. And so there's 3 holes. These 2 are what held the plate on into this assembly, and these 3, 1, 2, 3, are what we're going to be inserting these bolts into. How it works is like a tree. We're just going to insert the first one in here. This threads in all the way through, as you can see, right in the middle there. And that's going to give this some purchase. Now, this isn't connecting to the part that we're trying to take off. It's actually going through it. So that part will be able to slide along these bolts. And what we're going to do is we're going to insert a central puller shaft in the middle like this, and once we start screwing that down, that's going to push on the center axle and pull this assembly away from here, as far as I can tell. Oh wait, no, I don't have that right. I just had a brain fart. Pardon my language. What's gonna happen is when we hook this in, it's gonna push on here. It's not gonna pull this off. It's gonna pull the whole plate off of the shaft back here. So we'll be removing that in one fell swoop, I think. We'll see. Okay, so I've got the harmonic balancer in place. There's the pusher on the shaft with this connected to the pusher. I've taken a 2x4 to lock the gears because this is free spinning at the moment, and I've stuck this clamp right there just to keep it in place so that the teeth bite. So when I crank down on this, the teeth will bite into the wood, and I can, as I tighten it, this part of the shaft should start to pull. This whole assembly should pull along there, and I should be able to get it off. I'm going to have to use a cheater bar on here, which means taking my wrench, putting it on here like this, which is not recommended, but it's all I got right now, and I'm just going to pull hard on it. So when I pull on this, you should actually see some progress. Keep an eye on that white spot in the center right there and see if this shaft is moving towards it. It means that the gear is actually moving. So I'm just reefing down on this. I believe it actually moved like 1/2 millimeter. We'll try it again. See if there's a visible difference this time. Yeah, I think so. It takes about 3 turns of this harmonic puller to even pull this shaft that long. Yeah, I think it's starting to disappear. So definitely when we look at it from the side, you can definitely see that it's moving beyond that spot. But when we look in here, you can see that shiny portion of the middle shaft, and that's the part that we're exposing, which is cool, which means it's actually coming off. Definitely coming along. You can see that that distance is shortened there, while that distance has become twice. It's about a couple of big cranks on there. So you can see the progress. It's coming near to the end. I'm going to have to put something underneath this to catch it when it falls off, to secure it somehow. The other issue that I'm having is because this is moving so far along here and the shaft is getting exposed, that I've had to raise the roller to insert a 2x4 and then lower it onto there, so that this one, as the pressure increases, doesn't flip up when this cranks down. You may have to find your own way of stopping this from turning, but that's what I'm doing right now, and it seems to be working, so good luck with that. Quite a bit of difference now. Well, as you can see, the plate is off, or the gear section. Yep, so that's what had to happen, the harmonic puller. Those are probably 5 or 6 inch bolts just to give it enough pull. You can see what the ram, this little part right here, did to the end of the shaft, but that shouldn't affect any of it at all. We've still got the snap ring retainer, which had to come off first to get this off. Now we can actually look behind here and see that we can remove the rest of this assembly quite freely and lay it to the side next to the other ones. Sorry for the, there we go. So we've got all those. Now all we have is the shaft with another snap ring which will allow, once we remove this shaft to move out of this, should we need to remove the large roller. So I'm not sure how that's going to figure into it just yet, but I will. Okay, so we've gotten that off. What I've done is I've gotten a 2-ton, or at this extended length it's half-ton, engine crane from automotive, and to help support the roller, which is more than one person can handle when they're pulling it out. So what's going to have to happen to get this roller out, you can see that there's a retaining ring right here that needs to come off before this shaft can slide that way. Now, looking here, there are 2 blocks here and a single block here, which the shaft here is embedded into. It's not, and it's rolling on it, it's a bearing for it. The same goes for the other side, except we don't have that push through. So the shaft or axle of this is only halfway through or inside this lower block. This lower block is attached to these 2 upper retaining blocks, which also attach to this assembly here. As you can see, I'm guessing that these 2 nuts are going to have to come off to get these blocks off to be able to unattach the this block here and then slide out between the 2 rails and up and out. The same goes for this side. They're identical, except for this fact that the shaft or axle goes all the way through here. So we would probably have to lower this whole assembly down to its lowest point, which is almost touching the other roller. I would think we're going to have to put the loops under it first and then start undoing the bolts and whatnot to see how that comes apart. Just thinking out loud here, since these 2 blocks are what's holding the central bearing up, which holds this shaft, we'll have to lower the entire thing until it touches the other roller. This will travel down the track to here. Then what we'll do is, once it's resting on there, we can undo the bolts here and here to release the bearing on either side, so here and here as well, identically. Then we can raise these blocks up on the shaft, or just undo the 8 bolts, 1, 2, 3, 4 here and 4 there, to pull these 4 out to get the chain assembly off and out of the way, so that when we have the straps underneath this, we can raise it to a level where we can tilt the whole thing and possibly pop the block off here, because that doesn't seem to go all the way through. It's going to have to pop out this way, and then we can pop that block out. Then we should be able to pull, after we've pulled the retaining ring off of here, this shaft all the way through and tilt it up and out to remove the whole thing. That sounds delicate. Okay, so I have these straps all nice and tied up right here, supporting, or will be in position to support, the roller when the weight comes off of the blocks. Now I've inserted these two blocks here for the moment because I don't want the straps, when this lifts, to pinch together and become like a fulcrum point so that the roller slips off. I may even insert another one or two depending on how wide a purchase I want for these straps that are bearing the weight underneath to hold everything. Important trick time. Since at this point I want to remove the 4 supports here, there are 8 15th 16 nuts or bolts right here. What I've found is that they're all very tight and probably have never been moved in 30-40 years. So it requires that to keep, a good trick is to actually use a lot of leverage, and then you'll actually feel it crack. You want to go lefty-loosey, and you'll feel the nut actually go clink like that. And then what you want to do is you want to tighten it back down again, because you're just cracking the nut. Then you're going to go to the other side and crack that nut. Because if you take one of these bolts off first, the other one is just going to spin this rod. Like you'll see that I've done this. If I remove one like this, it just grabs the other one and it keeps spinning this right here. So I can't undo the other nut. So what you have to do is crack the nuts individually so that they're both kind of loose. So then instead of just cracking one and then doing the other and getting it spinning, you're actually going to crack and crack, whoops, and crack. Now I've already kind of cracked the other ones, so I'm just going to walk around, and that should make loosening these a lot easier, even by hand, because I can hold this now, and the other one should not be so difficult to crack or remove. So there's 8, and I want to remove all those. Okay, then we'll see what it looks like without those. Okay, so that's what it looks like without the 4 supports up top surrounding the top roller. There they are there. Took a little bit to get one of them off. I had to use a long cheater bar on my 15/16 wrench. I don't believe these need to come off. These are just the guide rollers for the plate in between. The actual bolt to take these angle iron supports off so that we can get the large roller out is again one of these, but it is a 3/4 bolt rather than the 15/16, which are above it. So we'll get that off and show you what's up next. So just a thing about those 3/4 bolts holding on the angle iron. The bolt itself actually goes through, and there is a nut, as we can see, underneath here, which you'll have to hold with a second 3/4 inch wrench once it figures on there. And then, because I've loosened it already, whoops, I should be able to just take that off. Yeah, let's see if I can do that. I'll just set this up here. See what I can do about that. Oh yeah. Oh, there we go. That's the handle of my wrench, but I can reach underneath and just unscrew the 3/4 bolt. And it hasn't dropped down onto my other hand. And it came out pretty nicely. I'm just gonna put this back onto here and store it right next to you. Okay, 3 more to go. Okay, one thing I've discovered about these angle iron pieces is that I can remove the 3/4 bolts here underneath the nut and the bolt. But if I look real close, they're actually welded. So this whole side plate, which is jammed underneath the rail system, this whole rail system right here has to come off before these come off. So yeah, interesting. So I guess that means that this block and this block will have to come off, and the same over here, this and this, and then we'll lift this roller out. And once we do that, we can undo the rail system and take out, unless, well, I don't know if, I don't think the rail system's not going to come out on its own because of the way the shaft protrudes through on the other side. Right there, there's this thing right here. It doesn't slip all the way up, so we're gonna have to remove this roller from the guide block anyhow, and that entails taking off these retaining blocks and these retaining blocks. Okay, so I've cracked all 8 nuts and bolts on either side. I've also cracked the nuts on this and this, so they should be fairly easy to do. Yeah, just lefty-loosey on each one slowly. There we go. And let's see. I'm just going to crank up the weight on this to take the weight off there. That way the chain, yeah, there we go. Now we're raising it somewhat. Now I can loosen the bolts and see if the chain assembly comes off, and I can hold the weight of the roller. Okay, so I've loosened all 4 bolts there, and we'll see what happens. It looks like if I just pull this straight up, oh yeah, it popped out, and this block, let's see, is very loose, so I'll loosen the other one, take that nut out, put them to the side, and see what happens with this block. I'll do the same for the other side. Yep, those just came out. Awesome. So 4 bolts over there, and the 8 bolts for those, and the 4 bolts for those. Let's see what happens when I wiggle a bit on this. We can see that they're somewhat caught in there, but if you look closely, there's actually kind of a circle here, a shaft, and it comes up to this. So those are holding clamp style onto this circle right here, for lack of a better word. So I'll have to take the weight off of them and see if I loosen this. Am I tightening it or loosening it? Loosening. Let's the weight go all onto the hoist. Okay. So, no, not quite coming out. Maybe I'll have to go a little bit further. Righty lowers it. And we still got some room underneath, so I might have to lower the jack a little. There we go. In order to lower the assembly enough to get those blocks out. Same is happening on both sides because the chain's still attached. And it's as low as I think I can get it. It's not quite coming out. What I'm gonna have to do to get those out, it looks like, because of the angle of that corner right there, is take the rail system off. More 3/4 inch bolts. So if I do that, then I can pop these out, it looks like, because they're not quite small enough to slip past the threaded shaft or the guard wall. So yeah, off with the guardrails. So on the guardrail here, as we were talking about, protecting these blocks, I've removed the 5 bolts. There's one at the top here that I haven't yet removed, but this is allowing it to swing open right here, as you can see. And I wonder, oh yeah, I could almost get the retaining block out of there, but I think I'm gonna have to take that last nut out right here and take it off. Let me see if I can get you to see that while I do it. Okay, hopefully that works. Just gonna spin this nut off. This is the last one, so I'm gonna maintain my grip on both the orange piece and the guardrail. I've got the bolts out. Now I've got the guardrail coming out, that to the side, and I've got the spacer block, the orange spacer block coming out. Now that that's out, I'm able to pick out the retaining block here. Cool. Now I can just repeat that 4 more times for this side and this side and this side. Okay, and then I should be able to slide the bolts off of the chain drive and then be able to pick up the entire rolling shaft. Okay, so we've got the guide rails off the sides, and we've got the lift blocks removed from the shaft, which should allow this to move freely up and down. The same goes for the other side. I'm in the process of removing the guide rails. The only difference is when we go down here, the bottom guide rail bolt, as we go around, as we can see, isn't actually a bolt. Well, it is a bolt, but it's a carriage bolt on this right here because of the drive shaft assembly. This is kind of a retaining block for this stuff that we took off, if you remember. Okay, that's the only difference. It's still there, and we can store it as is. Remember, when you're disassembling or reassembling, remember to check the threads of your bolts. As you can see right there, those are a little bit chewy, so the nuts might not go back on so smoothly. It might be an idea to find the exact same size and replace. As you can see, some of the spots are shiny and chewy right there. So as you can see, we've got everything supported. I've lowered the shaft or the roller onto the other roller somewhat. It's still moving somewhat freely, but this whole block is now loose. It's dropped away from the raising threads right here on that side and on this side, and it's kind of moved a bit. So you can see it's quite free. The only thing holding this up right now is the straps that I have, and that's steadying it so it doesn't roll away on me. So as you can see, I've loosened the 4 bolts on the chain drive assembly, and I'm about to remove that. So all I have to do is kind of pull this off just like that, and then I can remove the chain. Okay, and I can do the same to the other side. So now I've got the chain drive lifts out with their bolts stored like so. I might put the bolts back in to their proper places for storage, just so they don't get lost on each one. Now I have to lift this and possibly pull the retaining shaft out from here, which means pulling this snap ring off as well, so that I can pull this through the guide bearing block. Or maybe I can just tilt the whole thing up and get the snap ring through. Maybe that's better. Yeah, probably just don't even bother with the snap ring assembly and just pull the whole kit and caboodle up here and raise it like that, and I'll be able to pull the shaft out. Cool, cool. Okay, so we left where we were going to lift the rollers out. We've got the top one ready to pull out. Just maybe a little tricky on tipping it this way to get the end of the roller out. The bottom one is supported on 2 blocks, as you can see by the bolts there, and identical ones on the other side. They're just kind of like, there's a small block holding up the guide block or bearing block on the large ones. The bearing blocks are attached to that, so they should just lift out with the roller. And I spent a little while making these custom roller holders. The one on the left is for the top. It's 8.5 inches diameter, radius across the top, which is exactly half, and the larger one is 16 inches full circle. But I've only made it 3 or 4 inches high because of the size and weight of the larger roller. But it should fit nice and snugly into that, since that arc is part of the 16-inch diameter. So today I also got a tripod, so that should help things a bit. I'll try to set it up. Okay, so I'm going to try lifting the top roller out. Oh, came out all by itself. Okay. Hopefully it doesn't slip out of those. Try to roll this back. Get it to a position where I can lower it. Okay. As I can get it. Let's see what happens when I lower it slowly. It's gonna hit that. It's gonna hit that, so let's see what happens. Can't guess how heavy this is at the moment. Guide it on the way down. Blocks catching a bit, but ooh, it's heavy. Oh, it's starting to slip. That's it. this one. I didn't want it to happen. Okay, it's partly on there. Nice. And partly on there. So it's in the carriage, so that was dicey. I'm just going to lower this now. Try to get it as level as possible. Okay, we won't make that mistake again, hey? But it's in the carriage. Woohoo! Now we'll see if we can get a pallet jack to somehow slide in there and get it off. Okay? Okay, so it's resting kind of on there. Whoops, I got glue all over my fingers. I swear. And I'm going to try to get the pallet jack underneath here and lift it up and try to lift the wheels out so that I can get the pallet off. Thing rising now. Hopefully I can clear the wheels. Not quite. So. I'm going to try to lift the right end first. Extra 2x4s underneath. Try to give it the extra lift to get the wheels out. Hopefully just the front wheels now. Yep. Okay, so make way. Pull this back, hopefully. And the wheels are clear. So I can lower this now, slowly. Now I'm just going to jack this up a little. Try to pull that 2x4 out. Lower that as much as I can. Jack out. Alright, that's out. Hopefully I'll just turn this entire thing without it falling down. Now I should be able to align the jack underneath. use a couple of these to block it up. There we go. These. One of them's caught underneath. I can probably slide it out later on, but should be able to just pull this out now and lower to the ground. Except for, I gotta put 2 more blocks underneath on the sides. Nope. There we go. Woohoo! There we go. Yeah, I got an idea. I got that strap stuck underneath, so it should be a relatively simple fix. I just turn it like so. Lock this up. Pull that. I should be able to slip the strap out. There we go. Now I should be able to just lower that back into the cradle. Excellent. Good job. Okay, so here we are, top roller removed. Now we just need to get at the bottom roller, which, as we said before, was held in by these angle iron struts. They're not touching it, it's just the support that we have to get out of the way to lift the roller out with the jack and straps. I've undone the bolts, the 3/4 inch bolts on either side, and we noted that the angle iron is welded to this block, but this block doesn't seem to be welded or attached to anything, so I think it's just pressure fit from these tightenings holding it in, so I should be able to just whack it out with a hammer. So I'll give that a go in a second. Okay, so you might have seen me violently prying at that bar with the other bar. I found a better way. I'm just gonna slip this under here on the support bar and pry this way rather than maybe damaging the surface of that roller. There we are. Brute force usually preceded by brute stupidity. Okay, so I'm ready to strap up the lower roller. This time I'm going to strap it on the ends underneath the axle rather than on the surface, because that way they won't slip and I won't have that trouble like I did with the first roller. Scary moments. So I've got my strap all undone here. To measure, I'm just going to drop it through underneath here. I'm going to put it on the opposite side, hook out, reach underneath like this, and guide the strap into the axle area between the guide block and the roller. Get it kind of tight. Hold this so it's even. Then I'm going to feed this through the loop in the hole. Get it kind of tight. Then I'm going to feed it back in on itself right here. So it's a self-tightening knot. Then I'm going to feed it through one more time into another self-tightening knot, hopefully. Oops. There we go. And one through. So that should not come undone. Second one, same thing, center it. I'm going to go the opposite direction with that hook. Feed it around underneath. Feed it into the hoop, the eye. Tie it through itself. Tighten that, and then tie that once more. That should become a self-tightening knot. We are somewhat centered, which is good. Just check the camera angle here. Yep, okay. So let's give it a whirl, see what happens. Just gonna try lifting it here. There we go. Not quite centered in terms of weight. It's rubbing on the left side a bit. There we go. I think it's pinching a bit. I'm gonna have to finagle this a bit, so I won't make you watch the entire procedure. Okay, so a little snag is a very little snag, literally, is this bolt head which is sticking through right here and causing the guide block to catch on it, thereby making this whole thing pinch in here. So I'm gonna have to, I think, remove the start button cover to undo the bolt that's holding the whole assembly to the plate so I can get this out. Okay, well, we'll see how that works. Okay, so everything's unplugged. I just want to undo this screw a little bit, a Phillips head that's holding the conduit on, so I can get the guide block past it on the other side, which is just a minor annoyance. Just gotta bring it in about a 1/4 inch, and that should, yep, should now just slip past that, hopefully. It might pinch on both sides, but we'll see. Okay, let's try that. I won't even cut. Okay, so got it raised high enough to move out. I'm going to pull this back a bit, see if I can get the. Nope. Have to turn this a little. It's a little pinched right there. Yeah. Let's push the whole thing out. There we go. Let's get the wheel out. Get it a little higher. Just going to lift the end. I forgot to put the 2x4 underneath. Nope. Cut. Okay, so I've managed to get the wheels out from behind the joiner on the floor there, and I've got it sitting on two 4x4s to jack this end up, because that's what I needed to do to get it out. Using a pallet jack, I kind of slid it back. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to position the carriage underneath the rollers. Using 2x4s to cross the distance between, because the carriage that I built is not wide enough for the spread of the legs. However, I should be able to position this quite well when the roller drops. So we'll see. I'm going to start now. Okay, have to bring it forward a bit more. Never having my hands underneath, of course. I would like it centered, of course. Seems to be somewhat centered, so I should be able to lower it down. It should just drop into the cradle. And it has. Yay, team. Okay. Okay, now I just have to get those 4x4s out from underneath it so I can turn the entire assembly. So this is going to require some jack work. Well, yeah. I'm basically lifting the whole thing off the floor. But now I can slide the 4x4 jacks out, or 4x4 supports out. Now I should be able to lower the entire 2-ton jack onto its rollers and slide the jack out. Now that that's on the floor, I should be able to turn the whole 2-ton jack and get it into position to get the jack underneath the front. I'm going to keep using that 4x4s. Put them there. Okay, so everything's now resting on the pallet jack. I can loosen my straps. 1, 2, and I should be able to pull this right out. Now it's still on the 2x4s down here. You might be able to see that. Yeah. But I just have to get the supports underneath it for the... Then I can slide the 2x4s up. So 4x4 there. 4x4 in the middle, kind of spread apart so that the whole assembly doesn't roll off. But this is in between the 2x4 supports. So now I should be able to just drop it. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so with a little finagling off the pallet there and whatnot, a little creative blocking with the 4x4s, the pallet jack, and a few other items, we were able to get the large drum off. And it's sitting in its pallet cradle, which is nice, as well as the other one. If we decide that it's too heavy to move as is, this framework can come apart, which should be a simple matter of repeating the 5/16 bolts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so 12 more bolts, and just remember to crack the nuts before you undo both sides, because otherwise one side will just spin and you'll be in a difficult position, let's say. So any other small pieces can just come off with the nuts and bolts. I think no special instructions. So hope this helps someone down the road. It's been a slice. And then we're just going to package everything up and see, what happens with this press. Okay? All right, take care. Bye. Okay, one thing about the bearing blocks is they're very easy to take off. just like that. So if you are tilting the roller for any reason, these might pop off. So I got pretty lucky holding mine pretty steady. Hopefully you have the same luck, but just FYI. So 1, 2, 3 should come off really easily, and then of course the last one has the snap ring attachment, which will have to be removed before this can slide off. If you want to, if you need to replace the bearings for any reason or whatever, I'm probably just gonna take the ones off that need or should come off because they could be a hazard if they fall off. This one should be fine. So for any shipping or storing, I'm just gonna take these off and store them on the pallet as is. You may want to inspect the bearings. This one is, I think it's just fine. I doubt they need re-greasing at this point, but they should just fit there. You can affix them to the pallet if you want to, and I'm just going to leave them as is for now. Well, there it all is after some creative palletization. Still standing. Block them together. Equipment on one pallet, roller, custom pallets. There we go. Yay. All done, ready for shipping or storage, whichever you prefer. Good job.